My wife mocked me for being jealous of her boss, then I found their hotel receipts. The first time I told my wife I was uncomfortable with how close she was getting to her boss, she laughed in my face. Not nervously, not awkwardly, actually laughed. Then she called me insecure. 3 months later, I found hotel receipts hidden inside her laptop bag. And suddenly, I wasn't the paranoid husband anymore. I was the idiot who ignored every warning sign. My name is Ethan Carter. I was 39 years old when my marriage ended. At the time, I thought I had a good life. A stable career. A comfortable house in the suburbs. A wife I trusted. And a future that seemed predictable. Her name was Vanessa. We had been married for 11 years. No children. Not because we didn't want them. Life just kept getting in the way. Careers. Mortgages. Responsibilities. The usual excuses. For most of our marriage, things were good. Not perfect. But good. Then Vanessa got promoted. Everything changed after that. She started working directly under a senior executive named Richard Bennett. Richard was 52, divorced, successful, the type of man who always seemed confident. Expensive suits, luxury watches, perfect smile. The kind of person who never entered a room quietly. At first, I was happy for her. The promotion came with more money, more responsibility, more opportunities. I celebrated, bought her flowers, took her out for dinner, told everyone how proud I was. If someone had told me that promotion would destroy my marriage, I would have laughed. Just like Vanessa laughed at me. The changes started slowly. Late meetings. Business. Dinners. Weekend conferences. More travel. Less time together. Again, none of that bothered me. People work hard. Careers require sacrifice. I understood that. What bothered me was Richard. Because Richard always seemed to be there. Every story included him. Every business trip included him. Every after-work event included him. Every achievement somehow involved him. Eventually, I started noticing something else. Vanessa smiled when she talked about him. Not professionally. Personally. A different smile. A smile husbands recognize. One evening we were having dinner when her phone lit up. Richard's name appeared on the screen. It was almost 10 at night. She immediately flipped the phone over. Too quickly. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. And that's when the first argument happened. Why is your boss texting you at 10 o'clock? Vanessa rolled her eyes. Because we work together. At 10 o'clock? She sighed dramatically. Then came the phrase I would hear many times. You're being ridiculous. Maybe. I wanted to believe that. So I dropped it. But the feeling stayed. Like a splinter under my skin. Small. Persistent. Impossible to ignore. Over the next few months, things got worse. Richard started sending gifts to employees. Or at least that was the explanation. Wine baskets. Holiday gifts. Restaurant vouchers. Yet somehow, Vanessa always seemed to receive the nicest ones. One afternoon I came home early, and found flowers on the kitchen counter. No card. No note. Just flowers. When I asked where they came from, Vanessa immediately answered. The office. Too quickly. Almost rehearsed. Another warning sign. Another excuse. Another lie I wasn't ready to admit. Because admitting the truth meant facing something terrifying. The possibility that my marriage wasn't what I thought it was. The first major red flag came during our anniversary, our 11th anniversary. I had made reservations at a restaurant we'd visited on our first date, nothing fancy, just meaningful. Vanessa called 2 hours beforehand. She sounded stressed. I have to stay late. I stared at the phone. Tonight? I'm sorry. What happened? Big project. Of course. Always a project. Always, Richard. Always work. I ate alone that night. While my wife worked late. At least that's what she claimed. 3 weeks later, I attended a company charity event as her guest. That's when I finally met Richard. And immediately disliked him. Not because he was rude. Actually, he was extremely charming. That was the problem. He treated Vanessa differently. The touches lasted too long. The smiles felt too familiar. The private jokes happened too often. At one point, I watched him place a hand on her lower back. A small gesture. Easy to miss. But not if you're paying attention. When we got home, I mentioned it. Vanessa laughed. Again. You seriously think my boss wants me? That wasn't what I said. But it was interesting that her mind immediately went there. Then she delivered the line that stayed with me for months. Ethan, you're jealous of a man 20 years older than me. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. Because the alternative was devastating. So I convinced myself I was overreacting. I convinced myself I was insecure. I convinced myself she was right. Then I found the receipts. And everything changed. It happened on a Saturday morning. Vanessa was in the shower. She asked me to grab her laptop charger from her work bag. Simple request. Simple mistake. Because while searching for the charger, I found an envelope. Inside were several hotel receipts. Not one. Several. different dates, different weekends, different locations. Every receipt listed 2 guests. And every reservation had been paid using Richard Bennett's corporate card. I remember staring at the papers, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to move, because deep down, I already knew. The receipts weren't proof. They were confirmation. Proof would have been easier. Confirmation meant every fear I'd been ignoring was real. I checked the dates. One receipt matched our anniversary. The anniversary she missed because of a project. Another matched a weekend conference. Another matched a supposed client meeting. Lie, 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 lie. 11 years of marriage, and it was all collapsing inside a paper envelope. At that moment, I heard the shower stop. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the answer. I was afraid of how many lies were still left to uncover. I quickly slid the receipts back into the envelope. Then I placed the envelope exactly where I found it. Seconds later, Vanessa walked into the bedroom. Hair still wet. Wearing one of my old t-shirts. Looking completely normal. That was the strangest part. The woman who had potentially destroyed our marriage looked exactly the same. Same face. Same voice. Same smile. Meanwhile, my entire world had changed. "Did you find the charger?" she asked. I handed it to her. "Yep," she smiled. "Thanks." Then she kissed my cheek. A simple kiss. The kind of kiss she'd given me thousands of times. For the first time in 11 years, it felt fake. I spent the rest of the day pretending everything was normal. Inside, I was falling apart. That night, after Vanessa went to sleep, I sat in my home office until 3 in the morning, thinking, replaying, questioning. Maybe there was another explanation. Maybe Richard booked multiple rooms. Maybe the company used group reservations. Maybe I was wrong. I wanted to be wrong. Unfortunately, evidence doesn't care what you want. The next morning I started paying attention, really paying attention. And once I did, the signs became impossible to ignore. Vanessa guarded her phone constantly. She smiled at messages she never shared. She suddenly cared far more about her appearance before work. New dresses, new hairstyles, new perfume. None of those things prove an affair. But together, they painted a picture. And I was finally willing to look at it. For the next 2 weeks, I said nothing. I simply observed, listened, watched, collected information. The receipts were only the beginning. Then came the phone bill. One evening I logged into our shared account. Not because I wanted to spy, because I needed answers. Richard's number appeared everywhere. Morning, afternoon, late evening, weekends, vacations, hundreds of calls. Hundreds. No employee needs that much communication with a boss. Nobody. Then I noticed something else. Several calls happened during times Vanessa claimed she was with clients, or coworkers, or traveling. More lies. More holes in the story. The deeper I looked, the worse everything became. Then came the first major breakthrough. 3 weeks after finding the receipts, Vanessa announced another business trip. 3 days. Chicago, important client meeting. Richard would be attending too. Of course he would. I smiled, told her to have a good trip, helped carry her suitcase, kissed her goodbye. Then I waited. The moment her flight left, I started making calls. The first call was to one of Vanessa's coworkers, a woman named Emily. Emily liked me, always had. More importantly, she disliked Richard. Very much. We met for coffee. I didn't accuse anyone. Didn't make a scene. I simply asked questions. Emily looked uncomfortable. Then nervous. Then guilty. Finally she sighed. "Ethan, how much do you know?" My stomach dropped. Because people only ask that question when there's something to know. I told her about the receipts. Her face immediately changed. And that's when I knew. Everything. Absolutely everything. Emily lowered her voice. "Everyone in the office knows." The words hit me like a truck. Everyone. Not suspects. Not rumors. Knows. How long? She looked away. About 8 months. 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of humiliation. 8 months of being the only person in the room who didn't know. I suddenly understood why certain coworkers looked uncomfortable around me at company events. Why conversations stopped when I approached. Why people avoided eye contact. They knew. Everyone knew. Everyone except me. Emily continued. "They stopped hiding it months ago." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" "They travel together, leave together, spend weekends together." I couldn't breathe. Because at that moment, the receipts stopped being the worst discovery. The worst discovery was realizing I had become a joke. Not publicly. Quietly. The faithful husband. The clueless husband. The husband everyone pitied. Emily eventually reached across the table. "I'm sorry." I nodded. But honestly, sorry didn't help much. When I got home that evening, I sat alone in my living room. For hours. The house felt different. Smaller somehow. Colder. Every piece of furniture represented a life built on trust. A trust that no longer existed. Then my phone rang. It was Vanessa, calling from Chicago, or at least, that's what she claimed. I answered. Her voice sounded cheerful, relaxed, happy. The happiest she'd sounded in months. How's the trip? I asked. Busy. Lie. Client meetings? All day. Lie. Sounds exhausting. It is. Lie. 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 Every sentence. Every word. Every breath. I ended the call after 2 minutes. Then sat staring at the wall. Something inside me finally changed. Until that moment, I was looking for reasons to stay, reasons to explain, reasons to forgive. Not anymore. Now I was looking for the truth, and the truth arrived sooner than expected. The next morning, I received an anonymous email. No name. No signature. No explanation. Only 3 attachments. 3 photographs. I opened the first one. Richard and Vanessa entering a luxury hotel. Together. Holding hands. I opened the second. Richard kissing her outside the hotel. No room for misunderstanding. No room for excuses. No room for denial. Then I opened the third. And my entire body went numb. Because it wasn't taken recently. The timestamp was nearly 7 months old. 7 months. Meaning the affair started even earlier than Emily believed. Earlier than the receipts suggested. Earlier than anything Vanessa would later admit. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then another email arrived. Same sender. Only 1 sentence. You deserve to know the truth. Attached was a scanned document. A hotel booking confirmation. 2 guests. 1 room. Weekend stay. And the date made my stomach turn. It was our anniversary weekend. Not the dinner she missed. The entire weekend. The weekend she told me she was attending an emergency leadership conference. The weekend I spent alone. The weekend she promised we'd celebrate later. She wasn't at a conference. She was in a luxury hotel with Richard. And suddenly, I realized something horrifying. I still didn't know the full story. Because if someone inside that company was secretly sending me evidence, it meant there was a reason. A bigger reason. A reason someone wanted me to see everything. And I was about to discover that Richard Bennett wasn't just cheating with my wife. He was hiding something that could destroy both of their lives. For the next 2 days, I couldn't think about anything except that email. Who sent it? Why now? And what exactly was Richard hiding? I printed every document. Every photo. Every hotel receipt. Then spread them across my office desk. The more I looked, the more one thing became obvious. The affair wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't some accidental workplace romance. It was organized, planned, deliberate. And Richard had far more to lose than my marriage. The anonymous sender emailed me again 3 days later. This time there were 6 attachments, not photographs, internal company documents, expense reports, travel approvals, corporate reimbursement forms. I stared at the files. Then I noticed something strange. Several hotel stays had been billed to company accounts. Not personal accounts. Company accounts. Richard wasn't just having an affair. He was using company money to fund it. My pulse quickened. Because that changed everything. This wasn't simply infidelity anymore. This was corporate fraud. And suddenly, I understood why someone inside the company wanted me to know. Richard wasn't just betraying his employer. He was exposing them to serious liability. The final attachment contained a short message. Richard has done this before. I read that sentence 3 times. Done this before. Not once. Before. Plural. I immediately called Emily. She answered after the second ring. Ethan? I need to ask you something. A pause. Then. Is this about Richard? That was answer enough. I told her about the documents. Silence followed. Then she exhaled slowly. There's a reason nobody likes him. My stomach tightened. Emily explained that rumors had followed Richard for years. Female employees transferred departments. Complaints disappeared. HR investigations quietly vanished. Nobody could prove anything. Richard was valuable to the company. Successful. Connected. Protected. At least until now. Then Emily told me something I wasn't prepared for. Vanessa isn't the first. I froze. What? She's not even the second. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Emily explained that several women had become involved with Richard over the years. Most relationships ended badly. Transfers. Resignations. Career damage. Broken marriages. Richard always walked away untouched. Somehow. Some way. Every single time. Until Vanessa. Because Vanessa wasn't just another affair. Vanessa was the mistake. The one that finally created evidence. Hotel charges. Expense reports. Corporate misuse. Paper trails. Things lawyers love. Things executives hate. When the call ended, I sat alone for nearly an hour. Thinking. Not about Richard. About Vanessa. Because for months I imagined she had fallen in love. Imagined she had chosen someone better. Someone more successful. Someone more exciting. Now I was beginning to understand the truth. She wasn't special. She wasn't unique. She wasn't the love of Richard's life. She was simply the latest chapter. The latest employee. The latest affair. The latest victim. And somehow, that realization hurt even more. A week later, Vanessa returned from Chicago. She walked through the front door carrying her suitcase, smiling, acting normal, like she always did, like everything was fine. I watched her unpack, watched her move around the bedroom, watched her continue the performance. Finally, I said, "How was the conference?" She smiled. "Productive." Lie. "Good meetings?" "Very." Lie. "How's Richard?" The smile disappeared. Only for a second. But I saw it. And that was enough. For several minutes neither of us spoke. Then I walked into my office. Returned carrying a folder. And placed it on the kitchen table. Vanessa looked confused. "What's this?" "Open it." She did. The first photograph was on top. Richard kissing her outside the hotel. Her face immediately lost color. Completely. She looked up. Then back down. Then up again. Like her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. Finally, she whispered, "Ethan." I raised my hand. "Don't." Tears immediately appeared. Of course they did. They always do when the lies stop working. She started talking. Fast. Too fast. Excuses. Explanations. Half-truths. Rewritten history. The usual. I listened quietly. Then asked one question. "How long?" Silence. Vanessa stared at the table. Then whispered, 10 months. 10 months. I almost laughed. Because every estimate I made had been wrong. The affair wasn't months old. It was nearly a year old. Almost an entire year of lies. Then she said something that surprised me. I tried to end it. I actually believed her. Not because it mattered. Because by then I understood Richard's pattern. Vanessa wasn't leaving him. He was leaving her. Slowly. Predictably. The same way he'd left others. Then came the statement every cheating spouse eventually makes. It didn't mean anything. I looked directly into her eyes. Then why risk everything? She couldn't answer. Because there is no answer. Not an honest one. Eventually she started crying harder. Then asked the question I already expected. "Can we fix this?" No. Not because I hated her. Because trust was dead. And once trust dies, the marriage usually follows. 3 days later I filed for divorce. 2 weeks later Vanessa moved out. 1 month later something happened that nobody expected. Richard Bennett disappeared. Not physically. Professionally. His corporate email stopped working. His office was cleared. His assistant vanished. Meetings were canceled. Rumors exploded. Then the company announced an internal investigation. The anonymous emails stopped shortly afterward. Apparently, someone higher up had finally paid attention. Someone important. Someone with authority. And Richard's empire began collapsing faster than my marriage ever had. But that wasn't even the best part. Because 3 months after Vanessa moved out, the investigation results became public. And the consequences were far worse than anyone imagined. 3 months after Vanessa moved out, the company released the results of its internal investigation. And Richard Bennett's career ended overnight. The official statement was short: professional misconduct, misuse of company funds, violation of company policies, unauthorized expense reimbursements. Nothing in the statement mentioned affairs. Nothing mentioned hotel rooms. Nothing mentioned Vanessa. But everyone inside the company knew. The rumors spread faster than the official announcement. By lunchtime, Richard's reputation was finished. By evening, he was unemployed. By the end of the week, he had become the man everyone pretended they never supported. Funny how quickly people disappear when power disappears. For years, Richard walked through the office like a king. Now security escorted him out carrying a cardboard box. And that wasn't even the worst part. Because Richard wasn't the only person affected. The investigation reached Vanessa too. Not because she approved expenses. Not because she committed fraud. Because she participated. The company couldn't ignore that. She received a formal disciplinary review. Then another. Then a termination notice. Just like that. Gone. After 12 years at the company. Gone. The promotion that started the affair had ultimately destroyed her career. I heard all of this from Emily. The same coworker who warned me months earlier. Apparently Vanessa cried during the termination meeting. She begged. Explained. Defended herself. Nothing worked. By then, nobody wanted excuses. Only accountability. For the first time in nearly a year, Vanessa called me. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But curiosity won. Her voice sounded different. Smaller. Broken. "Ethan." I remained silent. Then she whispered. "I lost my job." I looked out the window. The sunset was beautiful that evening. Strange how life keeps moving. No matter what happens. I'm sorry to hear that. And I meant it. Not because I wanted her back. Because losing everything is painful. Even when it's your own fault. Vanessa started crying. Again. Then she said something I never expected. Richard left. That surprised me. Not because I thought they were soulmates. Because I expected him to leave eventually. I just didn't expect it so quickly. Apparently, the moment the investigation began, Richard started distancing himself. Calls became less frequent, messages became shorter, promises disappeared. Eventually, he stopped answering altogether. The great romance ended with silence. No dramatic goodbye. No grand declaration. No happy ending. Just abandonment. Exactly the way he'd treated everyone else. Vanessa wasn't special. She was simply next. Then came the final twist. The one nobody saw coming. A month later, federal tax investigators opened a review into several of Richard's financial activities. Nothing criminal at first, just questions, then more questions, then audits, then attorneys. The details weren't public. But the rumors were everywhere. Richard spent years living like a wealthy executive. Luxury travel, luxury cars, luxury expenses. The investigation started pulling that life apart, one piece at a time. By then, Vanessa was completely alone. No career, no relationship, no reputation, no future plans. Everything she left me for had disappeared. Meanwhile, my own life was finally improving. The divorce was finalized. The house sold. I purchased a smaller place closer to work. I received a promotion. Then another. For the first time in over a year, I felt peaceful. Not happy. Peaceful. There is a difference. Happiness comes and goes. Peace stays. Then 6 months after the divorce became official, I heard a knock at my front door. A familiar knock. I opened it. And there she was. Vanessa. Standing alone. No Richard. No confidence. No designer clothes. No expensive handbag. Just Vanessa. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked around awkwardly. I didn't know where else to go. I immediately understood. This wasn't a social visit. This was desperation. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. What happened? She looked exhausted. The apartment is gone. I nodded slowly. Apparently, unemployment benefits had run out. Savings were nearly gone. Job interviews weren't going well. And Richard? Richard wasn't answering anyone. Not her. Not former coworkers. Nobody. Vanessa laughed bitterly. A sad laugh. I ruined my life. For once, there was no argument. No excuse. No blame. Just truth. And honestly, that was the most honest she'd been in years. Then she looked directly at me. The same way she used to before everything happened. Ethan, I know I don't deserve anything. I remained silent. But I need help. There it was. The reason she came. Not reconciliation. Not love. Need. Again. People always remember your value when they're out of options. Vanessa explained she needed temporary financial help. Just enough to get through a few months. Just enough to survive. Just enough. I listened quietly. Then looked at the woman I once planned to spend the rest of my life with. The woman who laughed when I worried about her boss. The woman who called me insecure. The woman who lied for nearly a year. The woman who chose someone else. And surprisingly, I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Anger had left months ago. All that remained was clarity. Finally, I spoke. No. She closed her eyes. Like she already knew. Like she'd expected that answer all along. Then I added. But not because I hate you. She opened her eyes. Confused. Then why? I took a deep breath. Because this mattered. Because it was the lesson everyone in this story needed to learn. Because nobody learns responsibility when someone else keeps rescuing them. The words hung in the air. For a moment, I thought she might argue. She didn't. Because deep down, she knew I was right. Just like Richard needed consequences. Just like she needed consequences. Just like I once needed the truth. Vanessa nodded slowly. Then tears filled her eyes. Not angry tears. Not manipulative tears. Acceptance. The hardest kind. Before leaving, she asked one final question. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I thought about that for a long time. Then answered honestly. I already have. Her face changed. Shock. Confusion. Disbelief. If you've forgiven me, why won't you help me? I smiled sadly. Because people confuse forgiveness with access. They aren't the same thing. Forgiveness means, I don't carry the anger anymore. I paused. It doesn't mean I forget what happened. Vanessa stared at me for several seconds. Then nodded. For the first time, she truly understood. And then she walked away. I never saw her again. A year later, I heard she found a new job in another state. A modest job. A normal life. No Richard. No drama. No shortcuts. Just reality. As for Richard, the last thing I heard was that he quietly sold his house and moved away after multiple legal and financial problems. His empire collapsed. Exactly as it was built. One lie at a time. Looking back now, I realized something. Finding those hotel receipts felt like the worst day of my life. At the time, I thought they represented loss. The loss of trust. The loss of marriage. The loss of the future I imagined. But they weren't the end, they were the beginning. Because those receipts didn't destroy my life. They revealed the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts before it heals. My wife mocked me for being jealous of her boss. Then I found their hotel receipts. What happened next wasn't revenge. It wasn't karma. It was something much simpler. Consequences. And eventually, consequences arrive for everyone.